Tim Rixon from British Boxing News. Thank you for joining me for another fight preview. This time we're going across the pond to America, where there's arguably the biggest fight of the year taking place, which will be on March the 25th. So this Saturday night, Sunday morning for UK fight fans. If you can stay up till the sort of early hours, 4 or 5 o'clock, probably the ring walks will take place. And the fight is, of course, David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. Two of the top super middleweights in the division, which don't have a title at the moment. Obviously, Canelo's got all of the belts at 168. But this, Caleb Plant, obviously a previous opponent of Canelo, took it all the way to the 11th round, gave a really good, gutsy performance against the Mexican. But yeah, this is obviously two of the best in the division coming together, both in their prime, both with a bit of momentum behind them. Obviously, there was the loss for Plant in his penultimate fight to Canelo, but he's since bounced back with a win. But these two, I mean, if you look at them, they're all, they're all top contenders in the division, and these are the guys who are leading the pack. So, yeah, let's get to it. The bad blood between the pair is definitely real. There's no hiding that. Caleb Plant seems to have bad blood in all his fights. There was that sort of punch up at the press conference, the outdoor press conference with Canelo, and then that sparked a feud after that. His last fight, obviously, it was back and forth, the war of words, so it wasn't all one-sided. And now again, so that was with Andre Dirrell, that last fight. There was a big war of words. I mean, you saw the finish, which is a sensational stoppage, which we'll get to in a bit. But you saw the antics after the finish and what he did afterwards when he, pretended to dig a grave while he was laid out on the floor. So yeah, there's some bad blood in all of Caleb Plant's fights, by the sounds of it. Third fight in a row where there's this is arguably his third grudge match in a row. So it was personal against Canelo, it was personal against Dirrell, and now it's personal against Benavidez. So maybe he's very good at mind games and he knows how to wind people up the wrong way. What's really good about this fight is that either one of them can knock each other out. And obviously that bad blood I was just talking about, that could spill over into the contest, because it did in the last fight with Dirrell. You could tell. There was a lot of wrestling, clinching, throwing each other around. I think both of them were wrestled to the floor once or twice each during that fight. So you could see that the bad blood spilled over into the contest, and they really, really wanted to hurt each other quite badly. I think if this happens in this contest, I've got to say that if I'm going to sort of see who might let the emotions get the better of them in this contest, I've got to say I think it's going to be David Benavidez over Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant seems to wind people up and then sit back and just sort of let them go. So if anyone's going to let the emotions get the better of them, I've got to say I think it's going to be Benavidez. So that's obviously intriguing. I think they did a poll recently with boxing experts and fighters, active fighters at the time, and they sort of had about, I think, 22 out of 30 that were asked for their opinion, have all picked Benavidez. So even though this is a 50-50 fight, he's clearly the favourite to win. This is a fight that I think could possibly come down to game plans. Whoever's got their game plan perfect and they see it through to the letter could be the one that gets the win. So that's what's so interesting about this fight. Just a bit of a background. David Benavidez, trained by his dad, Jose, and they won the WBC World Super Middleweight title together. That was in 2017, which I think he held for at least 3 complete years, and then he lost it on the scales. Plant was obviously the IBF World Super Middleweight Champion between 2019 and 2021. That was the belt that he lost to Canelo, which obviously was the undisputed showdown that was the missing piece of the puzzle for Canelo to become, I think, the first ever super middleweight undisputed champion. So that was obviously, he's had a win since then to come into this fight. Plant is, you saw in that Canelo fight, he's a back foot fighter. He sits on the back foot, he jabs. His jabs come from awkward angles. His movement's sublime. you know, Canelo would back him up, but he never ever seemed like he was under any real trouble. There was a punch that got through in the 11th round that scrambled his senses, and that was it. He was done after that. But even when Canelo's backed him up into the ropes, Caleb Plant, he didn't feel any pressure to sort of get out of there. You know, he's back at the ropes. That's a sign to move, but he didn't. He'd stand there and sort of tuck up in an awkward kind of position, and he'd let Canelo fire his shots in while he rode the punches and moved. So he's got no pressure is going to ever get to Caleb Plant. He'll back up on the back foot and he'll move. He's got sublime movement for a super middleweight. He's very tricky and awkward. He flicks his jab up from awkward angles, which that could help him get all the rounds, you know, wrapped up in his favour. If he could maybe try and have a game plan where he's defensive, gets those eye-catching shots, and then maybe wins on points. That's a possibility. But yeah, against Canelo, he's got no respect for his opponents, because Canelo, formidable. You don't want to be in the pocket. You don't want to be taking those big beefy shots that he's got. But he didn't mind it. You know, he was happy to sort of hold his feet and stay on the ropes and let Canelo fire in anything he had, and he'd just absorb on the gloves, on the arms, or, you know, just sort of ride the punches and try and dodge them. So he's got a really high confidence level and a really low level of respect for his opponents and their skill and ability. I think obviously, yeah, there was some launching left hand in the end that Canelo managed to get through with, but it took him 11 rounds of trying to pierce and penetrate and get those clean flush shots in, and it took obviously 11 rounds for that to happen. So, you know, there was a good 30 plus minutes that Caleb Plant was happy to stand in front of Canelo and take what he had. Yeah, so what I mentioned earlier, when Plant throws a jab, he does it at awkward angles. You know, he'll sort of dip down low and flick it up high, and he can catch you right in the chin. It's really cool, you know, it's a really cool, tricky, clever shot to throw, looks great. So if he can sort of use those angles, that's going to be his style, his IQ, and his movement, and his awkwardness and trickiness. They're going to be the keys, I think, in this fight that for his success. Also as well, I think Benavidez was obviously a really, really strong puncher. I think another good thing Caleb could do is to sort of maybe sort of clinch him and hold, to sort of try not to let him get too comfortable, because as soon as he gets into a rhythm, it's going to be a really long, hard night for anyone. So I think he's got to try and when Benavidez comes in with his shots that he tries to reel off in 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s, that's when I think he's got to move, turn him, or clinch, but not to allow him to get into that rhythm. So yeah, and talking about Benavidez, obviously he's really powerful, hard hitting, combination puncher. He likes to fight at sort of range and at mid range. I think he's got an 88% KO ratio. So that tells you everything you need to know. So he's obviously a very, very big puncher. He's currently riding on a 6-fight stoppage streak. So 6 KOs in a row. Plant's obviously on the 1 because of the Canelo loss before that, Durrell win. So one thing that happens a lot is that when you get power punchers, it's quite often easy to overlook other parts of their game. So Benavidez is actually very smart. And that ring IQ and that intelligence, that could be also a key to his victory as well. Because if he can move Plant into the positions that he wants him to be in, and not for Plant to evade him and to go where he wants to go, if he can move him into position, then that will be a really key factor for you know, maybe catching him and getting that KO, which is I assume is going to be his game plan. I don't think he's going to want to fight for 12 rounds against someone so tricky and awkward and such a mover, because he's going to be draining mentally and physically. So I think his game plan is going to be to stop this fight early. How could it not be? So yeah, when he's obviously talking about how powerful he is and how formidable he is, but he is vulnerable, the same as Caleb Plant is. He's never been beaten, never been stopped, but he has been knocked down before. So I think it was when he fought, when he won the world title against Ronald Gavril, he was knocked down in the 12th round. I think if you've watched that knockdown, it was kind of like more exhaustion than anything. He wasn't hit badly and rocked backwards, or there was no force really in it. It was kind of just this sort of shot that managed to land while he was on the move, but while it was the 12th round and he was absolutely exhausted, and that shot just sort of, you know, sent him off balance and sent him down on his way. But it got straight back up. But what was interesting was that obviously Gabriel, knowing that he was, that was his chance to try and keep his belt, he unloaded the tank, and Benavidez sort of showed us that he showed us his vulnerability, but he also showed that when he is hurt and sort of trying to sort of defend, when he's in the trenches basically, he can come through, and he can deal with that pressure, being in the trenches the way it was. So that's quite interesting to sort of see. If Plant can hurt him or catch him, it'd be interesting to see if, as history suggests, he can get through it, and he can battle on and fight on and show his bravery and his heart. So I'm going to talk through some scenarios now. Benavidez is obviously going to be pressuring Caleb. Caleb's obviously going to be on the back foot. I say obviously, that's probably what's going to happen, but you never know in boxing. You don't know what the game plans are from either fighters until that first bell goes. They sort of talk about it and they allude to what they're going to do, but then obviously it could be all smokes and mirrors until the actual first bell dings. One thing I think is that obviously Benavidez is the bigger, more powerful man, so obviously it makes sense to use those attributes and those advantages that he's got. The only thing is that Caleb is such an incredible counterpuncher, so when he's going forward, he can't be too predictable. He has to obviously attack in different waves, otherwise that predictability is going to catch him, and he's going to walk onto a big one. And as I said previously, if anyone's going to lose their head and walk onto a big one, I think it's going to be Benavidez in this fight. When he's got opponents backing up, Benavidez, he is very, very assiduous, and he is a killer, got a killer instinct. He'll stick to them like glue, and he'll rain the punches in until he gets them out of there. So as soon as he's got Caleb hurt, I think that'll be the start of the end. I don't think there'll be like a first or third or fifth round knockdown, and then the fight carries on for another 6 or 7 rounds. I really think if Caleb Plant gets hurt or goes down, that's the end. Unless he's saved by the bell. If he's got time on the clock, I think Benavidez, if he sees that, he'll go in with a killer instinct. So I think that's something that's going to be quite interesting to see during the fight. So if Caleb Plant shows any sign of vulnerability, then I think it's going to be game over for him. He's talked a lot about getting a stoppage, Benavidez, which I've said earlier will undoubtedly be his game plan. He's put a number on it, round 6. That means he's obviously going to start fast and obviously be putting his punches together early. Okay, now again, Caleb with his counter punching skills, early on in that contest, could he catch him cold? Possibly. So this is what I mean. This is why this fight is the best fight of the year so far. It's just so interesting. There's so many variables that makes you think it could go to Caleb. No, it could go to Benavidez. Or it could go, oh, what way? Who's going to win this? I know 22 out of 30 boxing experts and fighters predicted Benavidez will win, which is quite an overwhelming, result. But it's definitely 50-50 in my eyes. It could go either way. So yeah, we saw that Plant's fight with Durrell, the bad blood spilled over into the fight, and that ended with Plant getting a sensational knockout, left hook to the body, followed straight up with a left hook up top, caught him completely cold, down and out for a long time on the floor. Fantastic stoppage win. Just shows you how dangerous Caleb Plant is. He can stop that fight that quickly. So yeah, Benavidez, he's got to be on his guard. Quite interesting, they both fought Durrell and they both stopped him in round 9. So again, another thing that tells you how much of an even contest this is going to be. So my prediction, I'll try and wrap this up nice and quick. I said before, I think game plans are going to be key. Whoever sticks to their game plan and has confidence in it could be the man that walks away as the winner. I think it's a case of Caleb Plant moving on the back foot, good movement, never ever allow Benavidez to get into any kind of a rhythm. Keep moving on that back foot, counter punching, using these tricky, awkward angles, and backing up. Whenever Benavidez sort of, you know, gets into his groove, try to upset that, try to clinch, hold or move, and don't allow him to get into a rhythm where he can start reeling off his heavy combination punches. The other thing I think Caleb could do is talking about how awkward and tricky he is to give a different look in each round. So to come out for one round on the back foot, then maybe the next round come out a bit more aggressive and a bit more taking the fight to Benavidez and sort of, you know, push him back, and then never allow him to get into that rhythm, but also never allow him to exact his game plan to the letter. So one round, back foot, next round, back him up, and then, you know, mix it up every single round. And if he can do that for a full 12 rounds, I'm pretty confident if it goes to the distance that Caleb could win on points. So yeah, on to Benavidez. He's obviously going to be looking to apply that pressure, to keep that tempo high, that power always coming in. You know, he could land 4 or 5 punches. They could all get caught on the gloves, but maybe that punch number 4, punch number 5 might get through. The only thing, another thing he has to obviously be aware of is the counter punching coming back. You know, you can't block punches while you're punching. So while he's reeling off those 4, 5, 6 punch combos, there could be one coming back, and that eye-catching shot that comes back, if it doesn't dull his senses and hurt him, then it's just going to catch the judge's eye instead. So if I was Plant, I would try to take a couple of my gloves and then land that big one back and then move away, and then all the time you're doing that, those rounds are being stacked up in your corner. So yeah, I think this fight is obviously going to be, it's going to be something that we kind of think that we know what's going to happen, but then we might get a different story when that fight takes place. I think Benavidez is more likely to be the more predictable one. We know what he's going to do, but with Caleb Plant, I think he could be the one where we're not quite sure if he's going to do this or if he's going to do that. So I think that's what's quite interesting. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen until that fight starts. Personally, if I have to put to not sit on the fence and to call a winner, I do think Benavidez, with his pressure, with his height and reach and size and power advantages, I think those are all stacked in his favour. I think he's the one that can win or lose this fight. If he can fight, the perfect game plan, not to get too upset or to get too angered too early on by Caleb Plant, then I think he should have this fight in the bag. But it's obviously down to how well he can fight on that night, and how well he can stick to that game plan and try not to get too over emotional sometimes, when Caleb Plant has obviously wound him up coming into this fight and could wind him up in the ring as well. It's such a great fight. I think Benavidez, as I mentioned earlier, has to apply educated pressure. He has to back him up, but move him into the positions that he wants him to be, and that's where he's got to get his quick power punching shots off, and that's where he can obviously do the damage. But if he's following Caleb Plant around the ring all night, then he's going to get exhausted. He's going to get annoyed and frustrated. So it's like I said right at the start, it's who gets their game plan perfect. But if I have to pick right now, I'm going to say Benavidez to win between rounds 9 to 12, because Caleb Plant's not someone who's going to get blasted away early. I know he's put the number on it, no more than round 6 this fight's going to go. But I think I'm going to say Benavidez rounds 9 to 12 in what should be a fight of the year contender. Thank you for listening. Take care.